Welcome everyone to today's pitch camp session. This is part of our series Sales for Entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. So we are trying to bring founders to share their sales journey. Right from the day they had their early days of the product till they acquired their initial customers, and then we'll also talk about the growth journey. So today I have a fantastic speaker with us from the India B2B enterprise market. I have Swami with me. Welcome Swami to today's session. So I'll give you a brief introduction about Swami, and we'll talk about PitchCamp as well. So Swami is a co-founder of Mojro, where he leads strategy and business development. Mojro is an AI-based SaaS platform that focuses on automation and optimization of logistic operations, in the SEM space. He has been in the industry for over 16 years in product management, digital transformation, consulting, and business development. Prior to Mojro, Swami worked with Dure Technologies, a social startup, Mindtree, Ramco, and SOX compliance product startup as well. So with this, welcome Swami. PitchCamp is an initiative, that we are bringing together to help founders enhance their, sales journey through consulting, coaching, and workshops. Right. So this is the intent. This is the intent of PitchCamp. We are also partnering with theater folks to bring in, to help founders enhance, the storytelling skills and the way they, interact with their customers from a sales pitch. And I would like to start with about, asking you to share a little bit about your background as an individual and talk through us, how you started Mojro with other co-founders and and the journey of Mojro.
Sure. Thank you so much, Bimlesh, for inviting us. Again, thanks to PitchCamp. Am I audible? Everything
Yes.
okay? Yeah, cool. A quick background about myself. I started my career post MBA as a product executive, in the sense equivalent of an associate product manager. Worked in a Sarbanes-Oxley product, then moved on to Ramco Systems, joined as a product manager for a balanced scorecard product, which was like very early stages of a next level of BI tools, which helped me. I think we did 2 products in that time frame of a year and a half. Took it to market in South Africa, launched as a product, again, got into the implementation consulting phases of that. Then moved to Mindtree, part of as a startup, as a BA, working on digital projects, and then slowly, e-commerce projects, then slowly moved into account management. Then I was in Geneva handling a larger account, had to move back to India to take up a consulting role, and then later moved to the US to do digital transformation consulting. So largely, if you look at it, except for the account management, I was, from a perspective until then, was more of sales support, consulting, product management, and a bit of, not like a extension of sales, right? Account management. Then came a changeover again, had to come back to India to join a social startup. That's when a full-fledged sales and product, engineering role, product management role I had to take up. We worked with in Asia Pac with Hijras, HIV patients, TB, malaria patients, UN organizations, NGO, CBO. A very, very nice experience. And then that's when, started selling more often, right? And now I take care. I'm part of Mojro. After the social startup, we started with ex Mindtree colleagues of mine. We started Mojro. In fact, we started this as an intelligent platform, which is a combination of SaaS and a marketplace together, right? It was a bit complex in terms of even positioning in the initial stages. While our biggest dream was to say, hey, every 1 rupee spent on trucking movement in India, can I take a 1 piece out of it and call it my revenue? So what all should I have in the bucket if I have to do end to end, right? So that's how we started. That's how we all came together. Then we realized that, okay, doing everything together might not make sense at this point in time, and carved out the SaaS, software as a service piece. Started focusing on that from 2018 as a very clear focus area for us, and largely selling to enterprises, focused on certain segments of the market, because our product has a certain unique features which fits into a certain segment very nicely. So that's been the journey. So far, so good. We look forward to become one of the top companies in this space in the coming days.
Fantastic. So, how did you choose trucking as a segment and logistics as a problem to solve?
Right. I'm
Do you
sorry. Can you
guys,
repeat the question?
how did you guys as founders choose
Mhm.
logistics and truck to solve?
Yeah, yeah. Interestingly, none of us come from logistics background. All four of us, Kishan, Ranga, me, and Amit, none of us had a background on logistics. The only areas where we had some kind of a touch was Kishan was working on something based on what Flipkart had as a big billion day sale failure. He was looking at some ideas at one end, and I had worked with a South African entity. We created a startup. Again, it didn't launch as a product yet in the market before which we wound up, but we spent close to 30-40 lakhs building the product, which was on the long haul, transportation optimization. What a Blackbuck and others are today doing, we did that in 2007.
Okay.
But technology stacks were different. We never got to the market. When Kishan and I met again, we started discussing more. We felt this space is still in the same stages when we discussed like a few years back. So that gave the conversation starter. And in 2015, we came together as a four-member team, started looking at more and more ideas around it. Dissected the market, did a lot of market research, meeting with people, and all that. So it took us a process of 6 to 7 months before we lined up and said, "Hey, this is what we wanted to do," and this
Okay.
industry has a lot of inefficiencies which deep technology can solve. That's how we ended up. It was not an accidental startup. It took us like say
Okay.
8 months before we could even say this is what we wanted to achieve.
Fantastic. And with this, but then, so what happened from identifying your problem statement and narrowing your industry
Right.
to building your early versions of the product and going to customers? So how did you talk to us about how did you reach out to your early customers?
Right.
Taking your early version of the product and and then converting them from a prospect to a customer. So talk to us about your first 5 customer.
Right. Right. So our again our journey had two components to it, right? Or two portions to it. One prior to be a core SaaS product, and one after. It's like the post COVID and before COVID kinds,
Okay.
right? So when we started, because it was a marketplace which is tech enabled, and we wanted to do not like a Ola Uber hailing platform, like oh hey, I want a taxi. I mean, I want a truck of X size, Y size. We felt, why should the user decide what is the size? It's not a human being who is transported, right? Goods have a certain internal dynamics around, say, what kind of truck has to be chosen and why, how, and all that, right? So nobody, when we landed in this market, nobody was catering to that need. That is where we found a sweet spot, and it was an urban logistics platform. Even the naming convention came from that. Mohenjo-daro, which is the largest city, and we wanted to name after a city. They had granaries in those times, which was like way ahead of their time. So engineering marvel with a city as a landscape is when we landed up in Mojro as a name. Yes, we started there. We did a marketplace. So our sales structure was also very, very narrowed down to say, hey, who will move within the city? Who are the type of people who would move within the city in the industry segment, right? Why would they move? And even building the sales team was more focused on, okay, if my target is a player like an operational or a planner in the warehouse, if that being the case, I would need a multilingual or people who can speak languages, because it's a metropolitan. People come from all places, right? So even criteria of selecting the right team member to go and sell was based on expertise in the logistics segment, connections in logistics segment, and also a bit on in the language capability. We had a team, one can speak Malayalam, one can speak Kannada, one Telugu, one Tamil. So it was like a combinational entity which we went after. But that was more transactional in nature, and tech was an enabler to that transaction. So the sale was completely different. So we were able to knock door, walk in, position our product, explain the difference between a traditional way and our way, and we were able to bring businesses. But it was all medium, small businesses which will come in quickly. Anything from 10 truck to 20 truck was like our sweet spot. We go and like grab them and come on board. But then the change came in. It's a thunder, storm. All lightning, everything happened. We had to move away from that model to completely be a software as a service product. That's where the journey become extremely interesting, because none of the team members had sales experience of SaaS. uh,
Okay.
Most of them, or all of them, with a very small team, right? All of them in terms of the sales had a non-engineering background, had a lot of understanding about logistics, but not a technology person per se,
Right.
barring the co-founders themselves who had some experience in selling it in a technology space. So from there, we had to completely. It's like a fast-moving train. You have to take a U-turn without stopping the train. Tough. It took us 3 to 5 months of in our journey to completely rework the way we approach, the rework the team structure, rework, upskill people, everything we had to do in that 3 to 5 months, and then started repositioning and selling. Good. So far, so good. We have been able to reach to a very reasonable state and have some marquee customers on board. But the journey
Okay.
was extremely interesting.
Okay. Wonderful. So more. So when you say so you pivoted from a marketplace to an enterprise SaaS product.
Right.
Right? So
Right.
post this transition,
Right.
did the sales teams that you had hired in different so by this time I'm assuming you had sales teams in different locations.
We were initially Bangalore and Chennai focused, so we had people
Okay.
only in these two regions. And again, after the software as a service decision, uh, whoever was doing whatever they were doing, it has to be like a grinding halt, right? You
Right.
have changed the whole approach. I mean, I'll just give a simple example, right? We were selling to operational people. Now we have to sell to the strategic people. We were selling very locally. Bangalore is not even a market. I have to go to Mumbai, Delhi, where the corporate headquarters are, and I have to position. We were talking to the logistics team. Here, logistics team is a user and enabler or a decision influencer, but my CFO, CIO would be my decision makers, and they don't sit here. So the team do not have the ability, or all of us had to rework on our capacity to go and position a high tech, high end AI product to
Right.
a market which is probably not yet ready. That was the key challenge, right? So rigorous process. I can maybe I can point out 3 or 4 things which worked for us in that transition.
Sure.
One was, like, we believed very strongly that the end of day sales is to people. It is an interaction with an individual who has certain aspirations and objectives to be fulfilling in a short term. So how does your product fit into his equation? That was one clear thought process we had, and we said, like, we will stick to that. And all our enterprise sales were outbound. At least more than 90-95% of our first set of customers, even on SaaS, was an outbound. There was not much of an inbound initial days,
So when you say
right?
outbound, this was feet on the street,
Yes,
or it
yes.
was phone calls.
Not a digital campaign. It was like, you have okay. Look at it this way, right? You had created an amazing technology, thinking you will use it for yourself and give a better pricing and rating for the customer who is coming on to take your service, which is a trucking service. Now you have to completely rehaul that product and make it as a product to sell it to them. As in, what was internally focused is now an externally focused entity.
Right.
So that way, it was a complex product. So you have to go position it, and the best way to do is to go meet people,
Right.
position it. So we had to very clearly do 4 or 5 things quickly, right? In the 3 to 5 months, upskill our own team. That is one. Second, we had to ensure that we segment the market the right way. I'll touch upon that. What all we did in segmenting and all that differently, or rather better, right? In that particular point in time. Then we had to finalize a very clear strategy on how do we articulate our story. What is my storyline, right? If I have to summarize my product ability in like 2 lines versus 2 words, and then also a good statement of explaining what it does, we had
Right.
to ensure that that is clearly articulated. Then very clearly, we leveraged our network, right? Now, as we talk, just today we closed one small deal with one of our e-commerce customer, thanks to Santosh of again part of Thousand Founders Group. It was a referral based sale, right? So that is something which we very clearly realized that we have to go after, and we strengthened our network. We had some do's and don'ts within that also. We had a very clearly defined process. There's a lot more to do. I mean, I'm still traveling a 1,000-mile journey, but we have done something which
Sure.
which work for us, and we are improvising that, right? So that is what changed us to get our first set of customers. We're still improvising it and improving it on a daily basis, literally.
Sure. Fantastic. This is wonderful. So when you were meeting these these decision makers in their headquarters, right?
Right.
So these are some of the stakeholders who have been running this industry with a certain expectation of margins. They know what capacities product should go into what trucks. They know their space very well, right? Some of them run
Yeah.
their own in-house logistics arm. Some, they outsource their logistic arm to
True.
other partners as well.
True.
So in the traditional industry, how challenging was it to sell a very forward futuristic solution? And since it
Very
is AI, second
right.
question,
Yeah.
AI requires a lot of data.
Correct.
So how did you manage selling a complex solution to traditional tech, traditional industry, and second, access to data?
Fair. I mean, this is a very interesting question. In fact, one of the key things uh, I would always say, sale in India comparatively is tough, right? Forget about AI product, non-AI product, and just to sell a technology product in India in itself is always a tough thing. One of the key elements is because our whole country is structured in a deficit budget mode, right? So we don't necessarily bring in extra budget to try out something new and then say, okay, whether it pass fail doesn't matter, we will be able to do it. It's not that as a model in India. So it's very cost driven. It is very focused on what do I get immediately. Every cycle is like, for somebody to come in and onboard a product and then showcase the value, it will be a 1 to 2 year max cycle, right? It cannot be like forever. So that in fact is a very difficult proposition to sell in India per se. Now on top of it, we are talking about AI, right? And
Right.
I have a very big disadvantage when we got into the market. My thanks to my team, they were not, how do I say, they were not letting it go. But from a perspective of when we got into market, because we were a late entrant, we lost the first mover advantage of positioning all these buzzwords. So when we got in, a lot of skepticism was there in the market. Why? Because somebody or the other, who have pitched it already, and who is the one who will take all these chances to implement AI-driven solutions if the market leaders? Any industry you take, it will be that first top 3-4 companies which will try, and everybody else will follow, which is a very understandable phenomena, right? So when we got in, we realized that a lot of skepticism was in place. People were not about whether technology can help or not. The question was, if you are providing me something, I've seen many solutions. Will it work for me in practical scenario? Will it really help me? Especially, like rightly you pointed out, data quality was like really bad, right? Not many, especially in the secondary, tertiary, last mile legs which we operate, not much of data is collected and stored digitally for you to even run anything which is worthwhile to call it AI driven or anything of that nature. And we keep jokingly tell, or even introduction icebreakers will say, whom am I competing with? I'm not competing with another product. I'm competing with your human brain and Excel, which is there sitting in your warehouses, right? These guys have a lot of tacit knowledge. Which kind of vehicle should
Right.
go to where? What kind of restrictions? Why this particular customer will accept delivery only by 5 to 6, but he will ask you to come at 3. So much of tacit knowledge these guys hold, and it was never documented when we got it, right? So if I take a sales cycle, it was not actually a sales cycle. It was more of a partly implementation cycle. Initial days, it took me even 5-6 months. Again, wherever I'm saying me, I'm referring to my team and not
Yeah.
me personally, just to make sure we set the context right. The
Right.
team had to wear multiple hats, right? At one end, you try to become a sales guy, positioning your product, explaining the value you can bring, and all that. And the other end, you actually take the product to go sit there and implement and demonstrate, right? And when there is no data, then you have to create a baseline. You have to implement the product as is, and then gather the data, and then over a period of month demonstrate how the value can be brought in, and then give a picture of, okay, now in 1 month data I'm able to do this in so many more days. These are the additional benefits which we'll be able to bring in. So was it a completely AI deployment right away? Maybe not, right? But you baseline something, You understand the tacit information, you convert it to business rule, you configure the product and make it ready for you to sell. Now, does it come under the sales process? Maybe in a typical scenario, no, right? I would have probably had a team which will come back and like sit there and do. But in reality, in our current scenario, we had to end up doing a lot more, right? On the other side, the technology team, like they are the real rock stars in our context, right? We will throw to them as a sales team, will go and throw to them a lot of these, I saw this particular new constraint. We have close to 30, 35 odd constraints in our, as a modeler in our platform. Now, we'll keep on going to them, with so many requests, and they will do the magic and bring back a quick response in no time, right? So that actually helped us to get into a market which was extremely skeptic, a market which had absolutely no data, a market which did not want to digitize, thinking they have everything in them. The human brain and Excel is a good sufficient thing to go ahead. We kept challenging their outcome. In fact, in few places, we even ran the product in parallel to their decision making process and keep comparing on a daily basis. We did it religiously for a month, right? And we kept on demonstrating what is the difference between yours and my decisions.
Right.
And then slowly the confidence level started building up. One customer came in, and then the second customer was motivated to come in. So that's how the sales process, got in. Deep tech sale in India, it takes effort. It takes effort, persistence, patience, and the team has it in there. Hence, we are able to scale.
Absolutely. This evidence based, outcome based evidence, right?
Yes.
That here is the way that you do prior decision making, and here is
Right.
the new way of doing decisions.
Exactly.
This has been not only your model of success, but this is how many deep tech companies have been able to showcase success
Right.
when they get their hands dirty on across the globe.
True.
So this
True.
works in healthcare, this works in logistics, this works in retail as well. Fantastic.
I add one more thing. Typically in India, right? If you have some thoughts around India related markets separately covered, we'll touch that later. But
Sure.
otherwise, if you want me to,
Yeah, go ahead.
on India as a market, right? There are a lot of things which, if you analyze it further a bit more, international market, like I was telling, people have a certain budget for digital transformation. They segregate it. They keep it ready for you to be utilized for initiatives which are future focused, right? So, for example, a lot of this money is spent in driverless cars and all that, which is affordable in a certain context. India may, you will say, hey, I have something which I have to demonstrate in the next quarter, right? Can you give me something as a quick return on investment? I pity the budget owners. They don't get something to build for future. They get something to solve a problem which is already. It's like building our bridges, right? You do a market research, and by the time you come and say, okay, this is the bridge which is required, it is already 5 years down the line, and then you have a budget which is 5 years before allocated. It's a similar thing which we see in the Indian market per se. So if you have to sell, as a team, what we do, even founding team as well as the sales team, we try to take that extra responsibility on us to go and understand what will make the customer be successful, because they will have fear on business continuity. They will have, especially for on startups, right? They will have additional worry about our business continuity, our stability of continue to giving them the solution, even to the extent saying, if they scale, can we support them on scale, right? So if you're working with a SAP and you fail, they will dissect, bisect. Every company has been successful. They will get into detail of why it failed and not the individual. But if they've selected as a budget owner, they've selected us or a startup, and they fail, they are in the direct firing line, right? Because the decision of the startup itself will be the first point of failure according to people, and they would not even pass that gate to go and look at anything else went wrong, right? Did the product work well? But yeah, there are implementation issues. No, that doesn't happen. So we realize that. So we get into more about understanding what will make them successful, and then we try to mitigate those risks first, then position saying, how we will operate, and how can we give you the value in the shortest time. So we give a proper roadmap on when what can be achieved. So that is how we've been able to sell in Indian market per se.
how much has pricing been an influence here, right? So in these type of initiatives, one, you're a new product,
Right.
you're in a disruptive space, you
Correct.
need access to data.
Yeah.
Customers such as this in an experiment mode typically don't agree on upfront licensing cost and stuff
Correct.
like that. So then you get buried in the in the procurement life cycle, right?
True.
So
True.
did you go in this path, or did you go on a more on a usage and an outcome path of your business model and
So
pricing?
it when we started, it was a chicken and egg story, right? Because deep tech product like ours would need a lot more support from the customer to implement it and make it work for them. It's not like you go just give a product and come out. It will do magic. No, it doesn't work like that, right? It's not a set path like a existing CRM to a new CRM. They know how it works and they come back to that.
Right.
No, it doesn't work like that as well. And these constrained modelers take a lot of effort, time to even understand and bring it back. So they need a champion on their end to even make it work for us. So then in these kind of cases, yeah, pricing is also becoming a very tricky thing, because if we say we are completely outcome driven, then there is a chance that people don't use the product and we don't get anything paid. But the effort is like so huge, right?
Right.
If we say no, we charge you only as a fixed cost in a certain thing, because they are very skeptic about the value it can bring on table in a realistic area, they would be hesitant to sign up. So we kind of try to balance it midway, right? Some usage driven, some we call it staircase model or whatever you call it. You have a bare minimum, you pay that to be on part, and then you scale from there, right? So we don't lose anything, not lose anything, at least we don't burn our finger beyond a certain level. Yes, we do co-invest, because we have to prove the actual worth of the product. At the same time, it is not like a free walk for the customer, right?
Okay.
You will try something. In India, that is also something which we have seen in few customers, right? I wouldn't want to generalize that as a behavior, but we have seen people say, "Acha, if it is free for 3 months, 5 months, I will come on board. I will test it. We will see later." They also should start appreciating that somebody is burning the money to do that, right?
Right.
And it is that if it is a funded organization, means that they have deep pocket like Ola, Uber, and can splurge money in making things happen. It's not that way. B2B enterprise sale is different from a B2C kind of investments, which is there in the market. So yes, we just try to strike a balance. We try to negotiate with them, do some free pilots here and there, maybe do some kind of data crunching, analysis, show report, show progress, then get into a contract so that they mitigate their risk to some extent, right? But yes, the contracts also will have carry certain milestones based on which the payment will start growing out. And we
Got it.
take one market at a time to implement, or say 4 5 geographies to implement at one go. So the scale is also a little slow. That is one of the areas where we also are now focusing to improve, because what is your booked revenue and what is your actual realized revenue. There is always going to be some kind of a gap between these two. So
Right.
yeah.
Got it. Fantastic. So, at what periods of time, what was that moment in time, or some parameters for you to figure out that this is the time for me to scale your sales efforts?
So we okay. There are a couple of things which were pointers which we had up for ourselves. One was like at this revenue we'll have to start. So we had a logical decision made, saying every so and so X amount of revenue coming in, we would need to enhance our sales team and go to a fresh market to be looked at, right? So if say that is running in say some MRR, right? That is one criteria. Second criteria, when we start seeing that the whole team is getting choked, right? We start seeing traction. So because the segments which we are operating, it's very focused segments. We don't go after every possible customer. We have done that. We'll probably cover that a little later. But when you look at that as a pattern, every time we get into a new segment, we would probably need more helping hands, right? Every
Right.
time we get a certain number of customers in a geography, then we would need more foot there on the ground, right? So we have that milestone driven sales team increment, and it's still a small team, again a very focused, amazingly committed team which I have been truly thankful for the stars. uh, because of that, we are able to manage scale without any difficulty.
Okay.
But it's a
Fantastic.
structured scale, right? Revenue largely decides that.
Okay. Got it. So in this entire process, I was coming to a question, and Murali has also posted a question there.
Right.
How long was your initial, first set of sales cycle, and how long did it take from contract to actually getting the paid? Because
Right.
it's India, right? So contract can say 30 days, but you may still get paid in 90 days. So in your case, how did it work for your first few customers?
First few customers cycle was very long. The first one customer was a very quick turn. Quick conversion. Largely because we were pivoting from one model to another model. They were an existing customer in the previous model, so they were the
Okay.
first customer. Thanks to one of our sales star one, he actually spot that opportunity, saying, "Hey, we are talking already about a transitioning to the software as a service sale. Why can't we go and pitch to them? Because I know they're looking at it now, right?" So that spotting the opportunity, I owe credit to him. And once that is done, we were able to go quickly position it. Because they worked with us for a few weeks, a few months, or whatever it is, they were able to quickly look at it and then do a pilot in one of the geographies, which eventually converted to a sale, right?
Okay.
But yes, there are a couple of stages we had to pass through initially. One was like, you get contracted, but there is a pilot period within which you have to prove a certain thing. So there will be a very minimal payment. Only after that you will have a large contract which will get signed. So this cycle, initially, yes, we had a paying customer, but not necessarily a large ticket sized customer. So that took us like what, 5.5, 6 months easily, before we could have a large contract in place. I would probably even be saying an underestimated value. It was even more, I would say, 7, 8 months, because from the time you started to that time, because they were existing customer, it took us that much time. But in parallel, we were selling, we were opening more doors, more conversations. So we had again, the team devised a strategy of having their time spent across different type of customers in a certain bucketed way. So 80% if we are spending our energy, or 60% we are spending energy on a particular vertical where we have already got one customer and large deal. Then the next 20% would be on something which is medium size, and the other 20% will be on smaller size. So you have this, again, sales is not like your I was a product manager, so I would write my requirements very clearly, and then I feel I've done my work, right? That satisfaction doesn't come so quickly for a sales, because you start, but by the time it converts, you might, you don't know whether it's a 3 months, 6 months, 9 month cycle. So you, especially enterprise may, so you will have to have motivations, or the dopes in between, right? So we
Correct.
we spent our time in getting some small customers, so that all the new concepts can be tried out in easily, because they will have a very limited entry barrier. It works the same way. They also exit very quickly, very short notice may. But at least the risk is worth, because we started getting some wins, right? That motivates you as a sales person.
Right.
On the other side, we worked continuously, follow up with the customers whom we have, prospects who were. So every quarter we started converting at some point in time. But the sales cycle, if you take individually, we had anything from 7 to 8 day ka sales to 9, 10 months ka cycle. So it varied. It was a very big. We are now trying to crunch that to a 2.5, 3 month cycle for every prospect we are dealing with. Now we have case studies, and we have some supporting things as well, which gives them the confidence. Earlier that was not the case, right? You have to start fresh. So yes, nine months was still okay for us.
Got it. So I think now we come to the important, one of the important sections, right? So can you talk about some of your, best practices on process and tools that have worked for you, and then have one mega question at the end.
Sure. I'll have some. Okay, let me do this way, right? I might be able to, again, what worked for me is what I'm trying to, or what worked for us is what I'm trying to articulate. So we had some 10, 12 pointers which we took up in detail, and we had to create a process around that, and then we started expanding that, right? So I can take from the first one, which is a market research, right? I mean, I had a disadvantaged position of taking an internal focus product to go to the external focus product as an external product. And there was already set of features available, but that was like done for a certain reason, not necessarily that it was a market research driven development, right? It's the other way around. So you have to turn around the table with what you have and have to go to the market to sell what you have. You can't keep building for another year. So that was a little bit of a disadvantage note which we started with. So what did we do is to create a clear hypothesis of who will buy this product, why would they buy, did a lot more market research, be it primary, secondary, got some very clearly identified segments. So we even listed down few segments, say we stuck out that say this will not work. For example, my product is very well positioned to give immediate value for people who move part goods in the same vehicle. If they do a 1 point to 1 point delivery or 1 point to 2 point delivery, my optimization engines will not give an immediate impact on the ground. So I can't really demonstrate immediate value and win a customer. So what I had to do, I have to stuck out people who do 1 point to 1 point kind of a movement, get them out of the picture, right? Similarly, we had to strike out the people who move anything beyond 300, 400 kilometers, because our initial platform was an urban logistics platform. So the whole kilometer considerations, the modeling, everything was done within a 300 kilometer radius. So I have to strike out, who doesn't belong to that category of movement of goods, right? So we did a very clear research around what would be that segment, what would be the sub-segment, who would be my users, who would be my stakeholders, who is the budget owner, where will this product fit in, and we created a complete list of companies which we are going to go after. Then what we did, we once we started identifying the the users who are going to be interacting with, like the stakeholders, right? So we started using LinkedIn to map the names and very clearly create a list of people whom we have to go after, and put it as a part of a tool. I'll come to that. Then we actually prepared a list of use cases for each of these subsegments. We didn't want to go in and say, hey, this product automates, optimizes, and then leave it there. That is the first line of, for you to get an entry, you have to be able to articulate your product value in 2 words to just get their attention. AI driven automation optimization, cool, I at least get an invite, right? But the moment I have to narrate, what is my detailed value proposition? How do I do that 10-12% savings as an explanation? What is that exactly the product does, and how do I articulate it in 3 lines, right? So we actually wrote down narration of all these in a big good Excel, which we call it as the it's like our Bible for us, right?
Your value proposition Excel. Yeah.
Yes. We created a playbook kinds, right? Where we said, how do I pitch? Whom should I go after? For each market segment, what should be my storyline? What are the keywords, buzzwords we have to use in that pitch? Because they would more connect to their own industry norms. They wouldn't probably understand if I go to FMCG and talk about a dairy. The processes are different, but in the day it's goods movement, but product might cater, but they would not probably understand. So the nuances of what they do, how they do, we studied that, put it as a storyline. We started creating that book as our go-to book, right? And every time we go to a customer, we get a new story, we add that. So that way, we started building the repository of use cases, the narration, the storyline, and what kind of value we can bring on table as a very clear positioning. And that is what people take it to the market. All of us, like irrespective of the sales team, who is the part of the sales team, everybody would go and talk about the same value to the same type of customer. That is something which we created. The playbook also had process-driven thing. How many times, what type of customer we will touch base. There I don't think we have achieved success in terms of sticking to the process, but we did have a set of process which we clearly articulated. We also did, the moment we identify whom we are going after, very clearly we chalked out, we divided between us, region-wise, type of industry-wise, and things like that. And we went to our network to get an introduction done. We don't necessarily, again, we do 3 level of intervention. One, we go to the users who are the operations managers of the warehouse and all that, to go understand their pain points, etc. So we connect with them. The other side, we connect with the leadership who are budget owners, like CFO or CIO or the supply chain VPs. That is another. And we also identify who will be the influencers like sales and marketing, if at all. And we go at any point in time for the enterprise, we go to all the three people, build a rapport, understand what they are looking at, and also use our network to give that confidence, because as a startup, that all that which I was talking about, continuity and all that will come into picture. So we try to seek help from our network, thanks to our investors, advisors, and even the friends and family. We got introduction, and introductions also helped in terms of going and positioning ourselves in a better way. So that is something which we did as a artifacts creation. Every sales pitch will have a certain branding. Every sales presentation will have, if for FMCG we might have a different presentation. Over a period of time we improvised each of those segments, right? Dairy we will have a separate, cement we will have a separate thing. And we will talk about what will be the time taken to implement this, etc., which are all like frequently asked questions. We'll have preempted thing there. And we maintain a certain standard format of even be I mean, because time is very critical in these kind of sales in India. Why do they come to a startup rather than a SAP or Oracle? Because they wanted to have a very quick turnaround time, right from customizations to your response time, and giving them more ideas, etc. So we took a consultative approach, and we started positioning or engaging with them to understand what else can we do. So we created all these dockets very clearly, and anytime you wanted to do, just this is available, pick it up and then run. So your turnaround time is also very low, right? And we used Pipedrive for a CRM, so that you can capture, and it has the history, right? People will leave, people will come in, but at any point in time, if it's a 6 month, 8 month sales cycle, you need to know who was the last guy who you touched, what did you speak before you go to the conversation, right? So tool like Pipedrive helps you to create that structure, and then you go back and quickly assess it. Yeah, with a lot of other things which we do, but and at least a high level, I was able to, I think, narrate what we do, right?
Sure. Fantastic. So, this is great, and I'm giving insights on how did you create your internal sales enablement systems and process, such that your entire internal sales teams are completely aligned, and there's a consistent unified message. The customers, the influencers, the budget owners all get to hear the same
Right.
message from different people. And I think that's a very important takeaway when you're working with the enterprise sales.
Very true, very true.
Right? Fantastic. So, one mega question that I wanted to ask you is, do you want to share with us, one interesting story of, one of these large brands that you've been able to crack, right? It could be, the journey of cracking Unilever or Bisleri or, Pidilite.
That's a bit tricky.
If that's okay, and not very confidential for you to share.
Yeah, so sometimes because we again see, when you use a network driven sale, right, without taking names and without actually pointing out to people,
Sure.
it's very difficult to give example. But
Okay.
on a high level, right, in a network person, or I mean, say someone from your advisor or a mentor or investor or whoever it is, right, would introduce you, especially in Indian context, right, will introduce you only if they know that you will live up to the expectations,
Correct.
right? Be it the product quality, be it your credentials in terms of going back to them and closing the loop, and ensuring that the value is demonstrated. It is a very tricky thing for them as well, because their relationship is at stake when they introduce you into an ecosystem. So first few months, first few deals, when we ask for introductions, it was always like a very generic introduction. Say, hey, we know them, we worked with them. If you find it interesting, please take it up, right? It will stop there. But then over a period of time, when we were able to demonstrate value, and we started going more vigorous in terms of making sure that the customer is happy and all that which he's looking for is provided. Now the network effect is actually doubled up, right? So large deals which we are cracking today are all people who actually put their stake, in the game, skin in the game, and say, hey, these guys, I know them very well. We have done so and so in so and so place. I would ask you to have a little more deeper look at it, and that's how we get into that conversation. We would have already spoken to all of those customers or prospective customers. But still, when a intervention comes from a network, it's a friend of a friend is a friend, right? So that works very well for us, right? So that's one of the ways we sign deals. I may not be very explicitly, I can give an example,
Sure.
but largely you have understood what we do, right?
Sure. So how much of customer referrals has helped you acquire newer customers?
A lot. In fact, because you work with enterprise customers, the advantage is if you make one good, implementation and one demonstrate value with one customer, they would actually first introduce you to their own departments, multiple other geographies. So that referral actually gives you a lot more introductions. Similarly, in supply chain, it's a very focused segment. If you see, it will be ex NITI guys or ex IIMB guys who are there in the supply chain head positions. So people would move from one company to another company within the same segment, and have they worked with one of us, they would probably give us an invite on the other one. So that is also something which is like an ex customer who refers and takes us along. Then the other thing which we have seen is, okay, I've worked and with a customer, and then there is a friend of them who had a casual chat, and they mention about it. They come and, like, it still doesn't come as an inbound. Largely, people say, hey, why don't you reach out to them? It looks like they have a need, and then we just go. We treat it as an inbound, and we go and, like, full-fledged, full speed, and get it done. So a lot of lot of these introductions, small here and there comes. That's very important in the enterprise sales, because your customer or a business brings you more business.
Got it.
It works the other way around as well, right? One place in one, especially when you're very niche, focused on 4 or 5 industry verticals, if you make one mistake, it will prove to be a very costly mistake, because the word spreads like hell. The second chance in an area where you are still a startup is a very difficult thing to achieve, right? You lost the confidence of people, so it's very tricky.
True. Got it. Fantastic. So, one last question, and then we'll take up some questions from the audience. How has COVID? COVID has really brought the entire logistics space to a grinding halt,
Right.
until recently, and now, we are seeing intra-city movements happening, and soon, at least for essentials and certain non-essentials, manufacturing is opening up, and hence, to a certain degree, logistics between cities is also going to open up.
Correct.
So
Correct.
how has this affected your your company's growth, and how are you kind of adapting it, for the upcoming year?
COVID, again, ideally, when we looked at it initially, until up March, we had a certain target which we wanted to achieve. I mean, until February, we had thought about a certain numbers to go after, right? But yes, COVID has really put us back by, say, at least a quarter, if not more. The one good part about it is, like, we work largely with the FMCG, dairy, and few of these segments, which basically
Right.
means they were still good. But the volume of movement has come down dramatically, because institutions were closed, and a lot of these buying pattern has changed thanks to COVID. So if somebody run at, like, say, 100 truck model, they would have probably running with now 30 trucks, or even less, right? So, and our pricing is based on the utilization in many capacities. So yes, the billing has dramatically come down. Not to the extent that we have to worry about winding up or things like that, right? Thank God everything works in a certain way. But yes, your recognized revenue will dip for the next, at least we are expecting at least until the June end, our revenues will have a dip, which actually put us back by a quarter in terms of our growth pattern. But the good part is, because it is essentials, which our 70% of our customers are in, we are expecting them to bounce back in the coming days, which is also an opportunity for me in terms of selling more, right? In the sense, what used to be a problem, saying, hey, throw more human being and get it solved, thanks to the reverse migration, for at least some more time, people, throwing more people at work, and India is a cheap labor model and all that, which is a myth, by the way. But people were doing that will now seriously have a conversation around automation optimization, right? Doing more with less is an expected concept which will kick in, and we have already started seeing traction in terms of conversations with various parties. Wherever they said, okay, I have a planner who knows everything. Now the planner is sitting in a village, so he has to be
Right.
brought before you could even start replanning, right? So there we are scoring a bit, edge over others. We have a traditional business back. So we hope that the coming days are going to be a good day. I mean, coming days are going to be good days. But yes, temporary issue or temporary setback is there as like any other industry.
Got it. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Swami. We have a few questions from the audience.
Sure.
Naveen, Naveen is asking a question. Do customers share their logistic data for AI to work?
So again, it is a long process. What they do is basically they will allow you to sign a NDA. Once you get over that NDA phase and you are able to demonstrate saying the data will be deleted immediately after the usage of the thing, they will mask certain information, and what we need is the points of delivery and few things like that, right? We wouldn't want to get into who is that customer who is there in that point of delivery. So yes, they do share some data, but not everything. So and all that we need is definitely available so far, right? It might not be good quality data. We have to do a lot more massaging before we put it in our system and try to get output, which is a huge exercise, by the way. I don't want to mean the effort which goes into that, but yes, they give after you sign an NDA, not before that.
All right. Fantastic. Another question from Ankit Singh. Do you compete with locus.sh or is Nodro different?
We do compete with them head on. In many places, we've even gotten over them because the product, what we have done is we've differentiated by getting depth into certain industry verticals. And they are largely focused on e-commerce and markets outside of India, but we have built very specific vertical driven solution, and that also has differentiated us from winning over few large contracts against them. But they're a good product as well, so I should give lot of credit to them, and they were first movers, so we get a tough competition from them in many cases.
Okay, fantastic. Praveen Singh has a question which I received on email. How did you shortlist target companies for enterprise sales? So this is your customer segmentation question.
Yeah. So as I was highlighting in the initial stages, our product works very well if it is a part load movement across the city landscape or up to say 200-300 kilometer. So that gives you a plethora of industries which move goods within that zone, right? If you talk about a electronic gadget, it gets manufactured at one corner of the country and then gets delivered in the other corner of the country. I might not be able to add value beyond a certain level, only the distribution leg for them. So what we do, we don't necessarily go after those kind of customers where we don't immediately can add value and get into the ecosystem. Well, yes, we have other use cases which will solve their purpose, but can I make that as my primary focus area? No. Like that, we have some 8 or 10 parameters which we have defined, and we created a hypothesis on what is each of these parameters as a weightage which contributes back into my system. And taking that into consideration, we have segmented the market. And then we further got into bifurcating the market and then going after the top, certain number of customers. Again, just because a company is big doesn't mean he is a good enterprise customer for me.
Right.
Fit into his ecosystem very well, and do I have a leg room to grow to a certain number of, certain MRR as in a certain scale. Only then we consider them as an enterprise solution, right? Or enterprise customer. Then we go after them. Did I answer the?
Yeah. I think you chose what fits your product first.
Correct.
Versus many of them look at the buyer organization or the or the ability to buy as
Correct.
a factor to decide the target segment. I think that's a very good insight. The next question we have again from Ankit. Were you offering free POCs to your clients? If yes, how did you ensure that the client was serious and not wasting your time?
We don't necessarily offer free POCs. Initially, yes, like say, again, it's also learning curve, right? So initially when we started, we did 2 or 3 free POCs. But then we realized that it's a very, very resource draining activity, or you got to put yourself into it before it makes work. And it can be, again, we agree, if we agreed, whenever we agreed with like 2 months, 3 months, or 1 month, and then it goes on and on because objectives are not necessarily concretely defined. We
Right.
change the model. Not anymore we do free POCs. But what we do is, like, it's like a future pay, forward payment, right? So what we say is, hey, let's define the objective. I understand that you are taking some risk. Let me also put my skin in the game. Let's define the objectives. Let's define the time frame within which you wanted to demonstrate whether this objective is met or to what extent it is met. We create a target around that, and then we say, okay, we will deploy so much people. If there is a travel and other expenses, you bear it. For the platform fee, this is the cost, and because it is a pilot time frame or POC time frame, this is the reduced cost or a discounted price. We will still pay, right? The day you sign a contract, which is like 2-year contract with me, I will try to give you a discounted price in the contract for, say, the equivalent of what we did as a part of the POC. Now, if the POC fails because of process related stuff, then you still pay, right? If you are not able to garner your team, or you were not able to give us time support and all that, you still pay. If it is because of a genuine product problem, right, then it is not it's not your fault, right? So then we will waive off that fee. So it's skin in the game for both the parties, right?
Correct.
They have to pay rent, and if at all something happens, they will get a benefit in the later stages. Largely, if you demonstrate value, because we put customer first, we do everything for them to be successful. We have not seen somebody coming and saying, hey, give me back the money. No, never. So it is still a paid pilot.
Got it. Fantastic. Last question on email. Indian enterprise clients can be very demanding in terms of customization and not pay for it. Did you face this issue? And do you think your margins are great while selling in India?
I'll take the questions in two parts, right? One, customization. See, it also depends on what are we talking about at customization, right? If naturally this product should have had ABC, we are a small company, right? All of us as a startup, we would have plans to build like 100 things, but with the limited resource available and the kind of time and money we have at disposal, we could build only a certain portion immediately, right? And we know that we will get there, but we'll have to start somewhere, and we'll have to start selling as well in parallel. We can't wait until entire product is ready. It'll never happen. That is one learning we have got it, right? So we start positioning the product, and if we identify that's a very genuine ask, and it's an ask which is anyways part of my roadmap, but it was like in the future, but these guys wanted to bring it up early, I'll check. We will, as a set of co-founding team, we will sit together and analyze it, and we will leave it to the CEO to take the final call, but we will put that value. Largely, what we do is we ensure that without affecting, if we can take it up and run with it, we will immediately accept to it without additional cost, because anyways I'm bringing it a part of the product as a generic feature. Right. But if it is very, very specific functionality which is useful for that particular customer, and it is a completely required thing for them to scale, and we can't renegotiate, then what we do is we ensure that we bring it up as a transparent conversation with them, highlight what is the money. We will probably not charge for them for the whole of, it's like a big ticket, but we'll do a very specific focused extra charging, and we will ensure that they accept and acknowledge it before we get started. So largely those kind of specific customizations are paid, and we never done it free.
Got it. And
Indian customers are not, I would say, like, not that non-reasonable. Unreasonable, right? That I wouldn't agree. Everybody, end of day, if they wanted to, they look at it like, say, can you help them to scale and demonstrate value within their organization? They're going to definitely support you. Correct. A lot of your anchoring customer would go out of their way to support you. That is, like, forgiven. The second is margins. Margins is a very tricky subject. It depends on how you calculate margin, where or what, where are you talking about. But yes, we do run my standard statement to my prospective customers would be, look at it this way, right? If you don't give me the right price, I will not be there for you to work with me next year, right? Do you want to take that business continuity risk, or you're going to pay me now? So I survive, sustain. You are not selling your product for charity, right? You are also selling it at a certain margin. So every business has to have that margin. Yes, we can we can negotiate within the margin. Can I bring it down a bit here and there, and make a midway path? We meet at a midway path, but not completely, without margin that I will operate, because I
Right.
incur. The more I burn, the more is the risk for you as a business continuity. And if the product is so good, it is giving you a lot of value. Why would you take the chance of making me die? Before you could actually potentially scale, right? So we do bring that up transparent.
All right. So, with no further questions, I think then we'll wrap up this session today. Thank you so much, Swami. Thanks again, for joining us and sharing your thoughts. I've had tremendous insights today on, on the journey of selling deep tech technology in India, and I'm sure, the audience as well have taken some notes and some insights on. Fantastic. Thanks everyone for
Thank
joining
you
in.
so much, Vimlesh. Wonderful opportunity, which you have given us. It's I'm looking forward to more of these series, and I would definitely wish had we had such similar interactions in the past when we had started. A lot of these mistakes which we made, we would have probably not reinvented the wheel. Wonderful initiative. It takes a lot of effort to bring people together and do this. So thank you so much. Please continue the good job. We look forward from you a lot. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Swami. Thank you. See you.